Over the course of the last 4 years, I've raised a total of 11 different chicken breeds, and in today's video, I'm going to rank them from the absolute bottom of the barrel all the way to the greatest of the great. We'll be ranking them based on how friendly they are, their survival skills from predators, and their usefulness in general. Before we begin, keep in mind these are all from personal experience, and you may have a differing opinion, so be sure to comment your experiences down below in the comments. Let's start off with one that is the bottom of the barrel from my personal experience. Now, contrary to what I may have said earlier, Wyandottes are not bottom of the barrel. They're just average, and let me explain to you why. For starters, they really aren't the friendliest chicken I've ever met. They're generally flighty, but with a lot of training, they can be as friendly as others. Key word there, a lot. I've worked with Wyandottes for over 2 years, and I've never once been successful in taming them. Even if they do not have a rooster, they still act very flighty, and for that reason, I'm going to give them a 6.7 out of 10 when it comes to them being friendly. And if you thought their survival instincts would save them, you'd be mistaken. They seem to be a predator magnet. Like, I'm not even joking. I am fully convinced that they are a magnet for things like bobcats and coyotes. And for that reason, I'm going to be giving them a 7.1 out of 10 for that. And their only real use is for laying eggs. They're a bit too small for being used as meat, although you still technically do it. I'll give them a 7.2 out of 10 for this one. After doing some basic math, I determined that the chicken's overall score was 7 out of 10, which would land him in last place in this ranking. If you know me, then you know I have a hatred towards green queens, especially roosters, but I tried to throw my bias aside and look at both sides of the argument for this one. Green queens are a fairly new addition, and my last batch of them were great, but are they that great? Well, let's find out. To find out how friendly they are, I had to get a few examples. I needed 2 hens and 2 roosters to conduct my answer with. I took a look at my deceased chicken Grey Cloud and a lookalike in the farm flock, and I took a look at Falcon and his likely deceased lookalike Snow White. And from what I found, they really aren't the friendliest chickens I've ever seen. I wanted to give them the benefit of the doubt, but since this video requires me to be brutally honest, I chose to give them a 5.9 out of 10 as their final score. But other than Snow White and Grey Cloud, I still have a ton of green queens alive on my farm. And looking at this gave me hope for their score, so I gave them a 9.4 out of 10 in that category. If I were to end it now, they'd still end up beating the Wyandottes if I were to be scoring them out of 20, not 30, by a long shot. And we haven't gone over the usefulness yet, and to be quite honest with you, they lay a cool color egg, and they weigh a decent amount, so I'd say they have a ton of different uses. I'll give them a 9.6 out of 10 for the score, and how did my brutally honest score turn out? 8.3 out of 10. Could have been a whole lot better, yet it could have been way worse. Now, if the 2022 version of me just spawned into the studio, then he would likely be holding a pitchfork in one of his hands because of the fact that I didn't rank them higher, but here's exactly why I didn't rank them higher. I feel like Easter eggers aren't nearly as friendly as I portrayed them to be back in my video back in February. They're always just a hit or miss, like my chicken like Puff, who is an incredibly friendly Easter egger, but then I have Chica, who is nowhere near Puff levels of friendliness. So for that reason, I'm going to give them a 7.9 out of 10 in this category. But their survival skills, I'll give them a better score, because on the fateful day of July 20th, this chicken breed had the least casualties. They were my Easter eggers, making up roughly 16.5% of the casualties on that day. For that reason, their flightiness came in clutch, and it scored them an 8.8 out of 10 in this category. And although they're not intended for meat production, they lay a variety of different colored eggs, and you cannot find most of these colors in the store either. So I'm going to give them a 9.1 out of 10 in this category. All in all, they scored an 8.6 out of 10 in their overall score, which I'd say is pretty solid. But does it compare to these next couple of chickens? Let's find out. Now, from my personal experience, salmon queens are a pretty versatile chicken breed. And even better, they're sex-linked chickens, which means that from birth, there are noticeable differences between hens and roosters. And even better, they're very friendly, but they oftentimes compete for the top spot. But I'm going to still give them a 9.3 out of 10 for this category. Moving on, survival is one thing that they are not good at. We started off with 10 of these guys last April, and as of writing the script on June 18th, we only have 1 of them left. I'll give them a 7.9 out of 10 because 2 of those 9 that died were due to birth issues, which was completely out of their control. But they are very nice chickens to have around, and better yet, they lay a ton of eggs, on average up to 300 per year. That's roughly 0.83 eggs per day, or an egg every 25 or so hours. So I'll give them a 9 out of 10 for this category, allowing them to score an 8.73 out of 10 as an overall score. At this point, the breeds only continue to get better, so be sure to continue watching to see what the best chicken I've ever raised was. Barred Rocks were one of the first chickens I've ever owned here on the farm, so they're a very good chicken for beginners. So why are they so low on this list? Because the next couple chickens have nearly identical scores, that's why. But back to the point, they are very friendly, however, only to people that they know and trust. They seem to have a long list of standards that to be able to be trusted around them. However, they're pretty chill for the most part, scoring an 8.3 out of 10 in this category. And as for their survival score, it's kind of mediocre. They don't really qualify for the top score with other chickens, but at the same time, they're not really as bad as some other chickens that I'll mention later. So we'll give them an 8.7 out of 10. And as for their usefulness, I gotta give them credit where credit is due. They have an insane amount of potential, and they almost identical eggs to the Rhode Island Red. And they can be used for meat, and the roosters are pretty tame in general as well. So I'm gonna give them a 9.8 out of 10 in this category. This averages out to an 8.93 out of 10 on the scale. Now, ISA Browns are one of my personal favorite chicken breeds. In fact, they're up there with number 1 even. However, let's not get too far ahead of ourselves, as there may be some dark sides to this chicken that you may not know about. But in general, they are pretty friendly, scoring an 8.8 out of 10 for that category. I personally found them a bit flighty at times, but in general, they're pretty friendly. I'll give them a 9.1 out of 10 for survival, because unlike Wyandottes, they don't seem to have a magnet wired inside of them. They usually just happen to be at the wrong place at the wrong time. However, they also are pretty useful as well, looking very similar to the Rhode Island Reds, and they lay similar colored eggs. They're also sexually, meaning that you could possibly make money by selling baby chickens for this breed. They scored a 9 out of 10 in this category for a final score of 8.97 out of 10. Now, you can argue that olive eggers are also Easter eggers, but I've noticed they're a bit different in certain aspects. But let's start off with the downside, their friendliness, which only scored a 7.8 out of 10 in this category. But why? They're pretty flighty, and similar to Barred Rocks, they seem to have a list of people they do and do not trust. But their survival score may be just their saving grace. They scored a 9.5 out of 10 in this category, mainly because they look like crows and are a potential enemy to red-tailed hawks, which are easily the most annoying predators on this list. And their usefulness scores are even higher, with a 9.7 out of 10, because they lay olive-colored eggs that look really cool, and they lay pretty consistently as well. Their final score today will be a 9 out of 10, and trust me, if you thought that was cool, wait until you see the rest of this list. I haven't even owned this chicken for a year, and I already wish I could have gotten these when we were starting out. They're seemingly perfect chicken breed with a few downsides, of course, but let me break down the facts. They're friendly, of course, and I have 9 of them, and all 9 of them are very friendly. I'd even go as far as to say that they're the friendliest chickens in the flock. And due to that, I'll give them a 9.2 out of 10 on this list. As for their survival, we got 10 baby golden buffs back in August of 2023, and we only lost 1. That was in May, likely due to something like a fox. But as of right now, they seem pretty decent and actually surviving, so I'll give them a 9 out of 10 here. Although I will say they're pretty small, and their eggs are a bit on the smaller side than everyone else's, I'll give them an 8.9 out of 10 on the usefulness category, with a final score of 9.03 out of 10. Not that bad, right? Black Stars or Black Seedling chickens are pretty friendly, and they're also a nice alternative to the ISA Brown or something similar. I personally find them to be a really friendly breed of chicken, which is why I'm going to be giving them a 9.7 out of 10 on this list. So we are already up to a strong start. I wonder how much crazier it will get. We also have 9 of them, and we bought 10 of them back in early May of 2023. So similarly to the Golden Buffs, they seem to hold up pretty well. I'll give them a pretty solid 9.5 out of 10. And they also suffer a similar fate to the Golden Buffs when it comes down to their usefulness, but they aren't really that big and usually only brings eggs to the table. They tend to lay an average amount of eggs, and I'll give them an 8 out of 10. Not the end of the world, but something that could potentially harm their final score, which turns out to be 9.07 out of 10, so not terrible. Now, when we first got Marins in 2021, I thought they'd be nothing special, but I was mistaken. Even though they were my least favorite breed of chicken in 2021, they slowly grew on me. And the only real downside is their price, which can go for $60 depending on which breeder you get them from. But they're pretty friendly, and same goes for their roosters, which are earning a 9 out of 10 on their friendliness score. Similarly, their survival score is also pretty high, that being 9.1 out of 10. The reason being because they also look like crows, which, as you know, can help deter red-tailed hawks. But I personally think the Australorp chicken does it better, and their usefulness score scores them a 9.3 out of 10 on this list. which is very useful. They lay a dark color brown egg, which not only looks cool, but can also only be bought from local farms and homestead. I've never seen a Marin egg at my local Walmart whenever I go. Their final score of the day is 9.13 out of 10, which is the highest score thus far, and there's only one more spot that could potentially be higher than this chicken score. Call me biased all you want, but I still stand by my opinion that the Buff Orpingtons are the way to go. They're friendly, cheap, so a win-win scenario. And they've earned themselves a 9.3 out of 10 in the scale of friendliness, which is pretty solid. They do have a small downside when it comes to them being able to survive, but I'll say they can hold up pretty well to the elements, which is why I'm going to give them an 8.8 out of 10 in this category. And as I said before, they're very useful, scoring themselves a 9.6 out of 10 on the usefulness scale, which brings their total score up to a 9.23 out of 10, which is the highest score on this list. Be sure to comment down below your list, and if you want to see me review 3 big chicken breeds, then don't forget to click the video on the screen right now, which shows you just that. I'll see you there.